Now the latest from ITV News Meridian in the south.
Good evening, welcome to ITV News Meridian.
Tonight's headlines here in the south. Coastal collapse, a dramatic cliff fall on the Sussex coast. Could more come crashing down? A warning to walkers.
Stop letting us down. Sick and elderly people slam a patient transport service.
Sooner or later, someone is going to lose their life through this.
King of comedy Eddie Izzard is on tour promoting a very different type of stand-up.
And a colourful commemoration, Brighton's Royal Pavilion as you've never seen it before. Good evening to you. It's believed to be the biggest cliff fall here in the south for a decade. More than 10 metres of the Sussex coastline is now sitting in the English Channel after plummeting 250 feet.
It happened at Seven Sisters National Park near Eastbourne and close to Beachy Head. Now the public are being warned to stay away in case they trigger another landslide. Well, this is the latest in a series of landfalls in the south recently.
Yes, indeed. A major slip happened on the Isle of Wight at the weekend and hundreds of tonnes of rock and debris fell at Bournemouth's East Cliff last month. Sarah Saunders has our report.
Thousands of tonnes of chalk crash into the sea as 10 metres of cliff break away near the Burling Gap in Sussex. It's thought to be the biggest landslide at this popular beauty spot for a decade.
Just to the left of the cliff fault is a huge fault line.
Alan Novis of Newhaven RNLI took this footage at the base of the cliff.
There's between 5 to 8 metres of cliff that is slid into the sea, and that's about 100 metres wide, and at low water now I understand it's about 100 metres out, so it's probably thousands of tonnes of chalk that's slipped into the sea. People have got to take real care when up on the chalk cliffs, stay well away from the edge and also well away from the base of the cliffs as well, because what I've seen recently is more and more smaller falls as well.
There have been other serious cliff falls in the area, some caught on film. Despite the public being warned to stay away from the edge, there are those who have risked perilous positions to take photos or admire the view. Even this afternoon, our cameras caught walkers close to the edge.
An event of this magnitude is quite rare. We don't have a very detailed rockfall inventory for this section of coast. But certainly, you're looking at decadal timescales in terms of the return period for something of this magnitude.
Erosion along this coastline is a constant and natural process. In places, homes are teetering on the edge. But the National Trust has rejected the idea of building sea walls, saying some of these cliffs are simply impossible to defend. So landslides like this one will remain a feature of the landscape. Sarah Saunders, ITV News, Seven Sisters.
A British man wanted for questioning about a murder in Europe has been arrested in Chichester Marina. He was detained by Sussex police on suspicion of illegal immigration. 17 suspected migrants from Albania were found on the same yacht yesterday morning. Spanish authorities want to question the 55-year-old about a killing in their country.
Teenagers appeared in court charged with murdering a baby girl. Joshua Martin, who's 19 and from Alton, is accused of killing the 7-week-old baby at a flat in Borden last June.
Shambolic, that's how patients have described a new private ambulance transport service being used by the NHS across Sussex.
Dozens of patients, including some with cancer, say they've been let down with 2-hour delays, missed appointments and even operations.
The provider, Copa Forma, only took over the service 7 weeks ago, but protesters are already calling for their contract to be terminated. Andy Dickinson has our report.
Protesters gather in Lewis calling for an end to a private ambulance service they describe as shambolic, on a morning in which drivers say the company's system has collapsed once again.
I got sent to pick up 2 patients from Brighton to take them to Hailsham and Bexhill from radiotherapy, and when I got to Brighton it turns out they hadn't been brought in from Hailsham and Bexhill.
And it's patients like Elizabeth Towner who are paying the price. She suffers from skin cancer but says she's had 4 hospital journeys cancelled by the private service, putting her recovery at risk.
I think it's disgusting. Sooner or later, someone is going to lose their life through this because everything has been put on hold, and if it had been done a month earlier, would it have been better?
In the 7 weeks since co-performer took over, dozens of patients say they've been let down. The G&B union asking for the original NHS service to be reinstated.
Well, we're lucky so far that somebody hasn't paid the ultimate price, and that's the thing we're worried about, is that people are missing renal appointments. Now, you miss 2 or 3 and you're putting your life in danger.
Co-performer has described the initial delays in its service as a perfect storm due to a number of factors. Hundreds of new journey bookings were unnecessarily withheld, and renal patients no longer receiving NHS hospital transport suffered huge anxiety, resulting in thousands of calls.
When we were doing it, it was excellent. I used to get told off because I was early for patients. Now it's an abomination. Some renal patients who need treatment 3 times a week are only getting in once.
Co-performer has apologised unreservedly. However, thousands have already signed a petition calling for its contract to end. Sussex clinical commissioning groups said the patient transport service was being investigated. Andy Dickinson, ITV News, Lewis.
Meanwhile, university lecturers right across our region began a 48-hour strike this morning. It's in a dispute over pay.
Well, our social affairs correspondent Christine Alsford has been following developments and she joins us now. Christine, which universities are being affected?
Well, pretty much all of them. We've seen picket lines today at Winchester, Bournemouth, Sussex, Chichester, right across the region. And it's all because the University and College Union, the UCU, says pay has been eroded by around 15% over the last 7 or 8 years.
There is money in this sector. The money's come in from students in their £9,000 a year fees, but that money isn't going to the people whom the students value the most, their lecturers, librarians and so on. So we're on strike to try and get a fair deal and a higher proportion of that fee income coming to the staff in higher education.
Christine, if the money isn't going to lecturers, then where is it going?
Well, the unions would say too much of it is going to the very top. The pay of vice-chancellors over the last 5 years has gone up by some 14%. The average salary now is in excess of £270,000 a year. But a lot of money is also being spent on new buildings and facilities to attract in students who are, of course, paying those tuition fees of £9,000 a year up to.
So what are the universities saying about this dispute?
Well, they think the dispute has really had very minimal impact today. They say that levels of pay are fair and that the offer that's on the table is well above the 1.1% headline figure for most staff.
There's a lot of money there on the table. That's why we describe it as, on average, it's worth for the sector 2.7%. So it's a very generous pay offer. It also addresses the other points that the UCU made in their claim. There is an offer of substantial joint work on gender pay gap, further work on looking at casual employment.
So, Christine, for now it looks like deadlock.
Strike's over tomorrow, but it's far from over in terms of a dispute.
Christine also, thanks very much for that.
Well, you're watching ITV News here in the Meridian region. Thank you as always for choosing us. Coming up.
Have you spotted a stag beetle lately? The creepy crawlies that could do with your help.
As always, for more on all of our stories, do head to itv.com/Meridian. Any views or news, do please give us a call. 0808 1010 095 is the number to ring. We always love to hear from you. Or you can get in touch via Facebook, or if you prefer, then why not send us a tweet at ITV Meridian.
Now, a father from Hove who suffered catastrophic brain injuries after he had a cardiac arrest has spoken for the very first time about the impact it's had on his life.
Dan Mason was a fit and healthy 42-year-old when his heart stopped suddenly. He's been left blind and paralysed. Charlotte Wilkins has our exclusive report.
She's quite heavy, isn't she? She's getting big. She's one today. Oh. You're going to give Daddy a kiss? Oh, you're going
a kiss for his daughter on her first birthday. Dan Mason has missed so many of Amelie's milestones, but he was determined to celebrate her special day with her.
What does it mean to you to be able to spend Amelie's birthday with her?
Everything. Yeah.
The fit and healthy 42-year-old was left blind and paralysed after his heart stopped suddenly. Since September, he has been recovering in hospital and is now partway through his rehabilitation in the Royal Hospital for Neurodisability in Putney.
Can you see?
It's yellow.
Dan is now able to see colours and can talk. But the lack of oxygen to his brain caused his body to contract so much that he's in constant pain. He's recently had his legs stretched out, but he still has a long way to go.
I asked him whether he has regrets that his life was saved, and despite all the disabilities, he keeps saying, I'd rather be alive and be able to hear the kids than not be around at all.
It's been a really difficult 8 months, I know, for you. What's been the hardest part, do you think?
Oh, not being able to see. I can't see.
Sabrina and her friends are continuing to fundraise to cover the cost of Dan's future needs, which they estimate could be hundreds of thousands of pounds.
She has to worry about his future care, which at the moment is 24 hours a day. There is alternative treatments and therapies she'd like to try which aren't covered on the NHS. But most of all, I think she just wants to be a family again. She wants Dan, when he's ready, to be at home. She needs to reconfigure the house. You know, there's so much to think about.
Once his rehabilitation comes to an end, it's unclear what the next steps will be for Dan and his family.
What are your hopes for the future?
I was to see be pain-free, would be good. Be normal, that's all.
Charlotte Wilkins, ITV News.
Amazing man, amazing family. Coming up after us here on ITV, the evening news. Here's Mary Nightingale to tell us more.
Leaving the EU would lead to 2 more years of austerity in the UK. That's the warning from the respected Institute for Fiscal Studies. Nigel Farage claims it's biased as it's part funded by the EU. Hundreds more petrol stations in France run out of fuel as a strike by oil workers hits supplies. And Marks and Spencer's go in search of Mrs M&S after a fall in profits. But who is it? We'll find out with Alistair Stewart and me at 6:30.
We will, thank you. Now, people who wear contact lenses are being warned to make sure they follow care instructions carefully. It's after one user washed her lenses with tap water.
What followed was a catalogue of problems, and Lisa Mainwaring is still suffering. But she's not alone. An ITV News investigation has discovered up to 98% of users don't follow proper guidelines. Ellie Barker has the details.
For Lisa Mainwaring, it went from this to this. She has acanthamoeba keratitis, an infection which leaves you needing months of treatment and can be potentially blinding.
It's painful and it's just like really, you know, I haven't been able to work from it.
Doctors believe she caught it after rinsing her lenses in water.
I have been known to rinse my lenses in water because I assume it's clean, and I've occasionally fallen asleep in them, but I don't think that is the problem. But I think, and I don't regularly shower with my lenses in, but if I have a shower in the middle of the afternoon, sometimes I'll have forgotten to take my lenses out, and I will go in the showers.
She's in constant discomfort, has headaches and finds it difficult to sleep. Even while interviewing her, her alarm goes to remind her to take her drops.
If I miss my eye,
And how has it made you feel in yourself?
I'm tired, which I don't generally get tired. I find myself really weary of an evening. I haven't allowed myself to think too much about it all. I've just been really focusing on just making sure I feel okay on a day-to-day basis.
You may think a quick rinse in your own clean bathroom under the hot water tap, well, what's the problem? But in fact, it's one of the most dangerous things you can do, and it's believed up to 98% of contact lens wearers don't follow proper guidelines. So, what is the advice?
Don't. Contact lenses should never be in contact with domestic water supply.
And why is that?
Because this is where the infection generally comes from, and it can be from case contamination. So what actually happens is that contact lenses have a biofilm on them. They build up while they're in the eye a layer of protein and lipids on their surface, which are in our tears, and this gives the amoeba something to eat. This then goes into the case, and that level of contaminants in the case again gives the amoeba something to have a munch on. So it's actually a breeding ground for these things.
Lisa will make a full recovery, but she does face several more months of treatment. In the meantime, she's warning others, don't take shortcuts. Your only solution is the solution. Ellie Barker, ITV News.
Tens of thousands of rail passengers are facing mass train cancellations every day at Southern because of ongoing sickness by guards, the company says.
They say around 100 trains a day are cancelled, with over 1,000 sick days in the last month alone, and that's double the normal rate.
Well, there is the suspicion that the sickness is related to the recent strike action, but the RMT union have accused Southern of a disgraceful campaign of misinformation and say the blame lies with them. Does it? Well, our transport correspondent Mike Pearce joins us now. 100 trains a day cancelled, Mike. There must be incredibly high levels of sickness.
Yeah, Southern saying it's twice the normal number, and it's saying also that it's published these figures this afternoon so people can understand why so many trains are being cancelled. An average day we're hearing, in some days more than 150, other days it's slightly less than that. But nevertheless, that does mean massive disruption for many, many thousands of passengers, and MPs are tonight demanding a meeting with the Transport Secretary.
Actually, the service has got worse. I mean, just yet on Monday, we had 156 cancellations, 203 cancellations on Sunday, and that isn't just a figure. That's people trying to get to work, that's people trying to catch flights at Gatwick, that's people trying to come down to the south coast. Tourists are very important this time of year. So real people are being impacted by these difficulties.
So, Mike, there have been these rumours that the guards are going off sick in protest. What do you know about that?
Well, it's being dubbed the sick note strike, in fact. What I do know is that the union is actually saying that it believes there are not enough staff employed in the first place. What is suspicious, I think, and has got Southern suspicious, is that these figures have only doubled since the strike action got underway. So I think there is a lot of suspicion. We don't know exactly, but that certainly, I have to say, is the suspicion.
Are Southern in any danger of losing their franchise because of all these problems?
Well, if it goes on like this, I think there are going to be questions asked. I don't think they will actually lose the franchise, because I think they are being backed by the government, because there are other changes coming to other train franchises. That may also see the issue that we're seeing here with drivers closing doors coming as well. So I don't think that's an option at the moment, but clearly MPs are unhappy, passengers are unhappy, and what everybody's saying is this cannot continue.
We await the outcome. Mike Pearce, as always, thank you very much indeed.
Now, Eddie Izzard is one of the country's most successful stand-up comedians, and his latest tour has taken him to Reading.
Yes, but it's not gags he's been telling there. He's been encouraging students at the university to vote to stay in Europe.
He went head-to-head with the author and Conservative MEP Daniel Hannan, who called on young people to take Britain out of the Union. Penny Sylvester was there.
Within minutes of arriving on campus, the actor and comedian was out meeting students and putting his case to them.
Are you guys registered?
Yeah.
And do you know which way you might want to vote?
Not yet. His opposite number, Daniel Hannan, author and member of the European Parliament, was doing the same, having arrived on campus direct from Brussels.
Which way are you going to be voting?
I'll be voting Leave.
Yeah.
The French media wanted opinions.
Parce que je suis positive au sujet de Europe. I'm a very positive person about Europe.
And an Italian student spoke of her concerns.
Of course, I'm very afraid of it because I
it wouldn't be the same for me, of course, to stay in this country.
A lot of our students in the debates we've taken part in and in the information evenings we set up seemed to have strong feelings about the referendum. A lot of them equally hadn't really registered to vote yet, which was a little bit worrying.
I'm trying to make it as simple as I can. There are opportunities out there and they could disappear. If they care about humanity, I think we should remain in.
What it means is that we take back the right to make our own laws, trading and cooperating with our friends on every continent, including Europe, but governing ourselves.
Both sides urged the 300-strong audience to register to vote and encourage their friends to do the same.
It's a great thing if we get people registered just to use the Democratic. Even if they're voting leave, even if they want to leave, get them to register so that they can make that vote. Tell them the wrong date for the actual referendum, but still, they should have that democracy.
I just wanted to ask how will remaining in or leaving the EU affect graduate prospects?
After almost 2 hours of debate, many of the students we've spoken to have now made up their minds. Some have yet still to decide, but what they're all saying is that debates like this help them decide.
It was very interesting, very thought-provoking.
Good arguments both sides, and I think it's a bit more research for myself personally.
I think they're good, both good speakers in like different ways.
This afternoon, the Eddie Izzard political roadshow was at Southampton University, a campaign that takes in 31 cities in 31 days. Penny Sylvester, ITV News, Reading.
Now, a unique chapter in Brighton's history has been brought to life at one of the city's landmarks.
Yes, the Brighton Pavilion is being lit up every night this week to commemorate Indian soldiers who fought in the Great War. More than 2,000 wounded men were treated at the Pavilion. With more, Nashri Nissa.
Shining a light on the pavilion's past. Images, music and performance help to tell the story of the wounded Indian soldiers who arrived in Brighton 100 years ago.
No idea, and the sort of weird, surreal nature of turning the insides of the dome and the pavilion into a hospital, with some sort of strange notion that the Indian troops might find that sort of like an echo of home, but actually for them must have been like some weird hallucinogenic kind of trip to arrive in this place that is not actually India, not China, not anything. It's a sort of weird Western concoction. And in a sense it was a propaganda exercise by the British military of the time to keep the Indian troops happy. Somehow this was a way of saying, actually, we're looking after you. And the King visited. There were lots of very well staged kind of publicity photographs that showed how much the kind of, the troops were enjoying themselves. But, what we're trying to do with this project is dig a little deeper as to what was really going on.
More than 2,000 soldiers made up of Muslims, Sikhs and Hindus were sent to Brighton from the battlefields of France and Belgium.
Thousands of letters were written from the Western Front and from Brighton back home to mothers, wives, sisters and daughters. And there is a pattern that develops. During the early part of the war, it's pretty clear that there's a kind of gratefulness about being treated in Brighton, in what was the King's former palace, etc. But as the war goes on and goes beyond Christmas, it becomes clear that soldiers are writing back to their relatives and saying, don't come. Absolutely don't come. This is a story about soldiers who were brought to Brighton, patched up and sent back to the Western Front. And it's important, I think, to remember that these million soldiers who fought in the Great War contributed to all of our freedoms.
The Arch project runs until Saturday. Nashri Nissa, ITV News.
It's absolutely
Stunning.
breathtaking.
Yeah,
it
really
really is. An intriguing question. When was the last time you spotted a stag beetle?
It's been a while. It's been a while. But apparently it's become harder to see them in many parts of the region, and there are some areas where you can't see them at all.
Now, across the south last year, this is how many were spotted and recorded in a campaign called the Great Stag Hunt. Most were recorded in Hampshire, 901 were seen there, 593 in Dorset, 597 in Berkshire, but look at East Sussex, only 9 stag beetles were seen there last year, 6 in Wiltshire and 7 on the Isle of Wight.
Well, now conservationists want as many people as possible to keep an eye open for the creatures, and Simon is in Sussex for us tonight. So Simon, have you spotted any there tonight?
Well, you'd think, wouldn't you, in the glorious surroundings of the South Downs, that I'd see loads of them. Stace, Fred, I have seen not a single one, and Laura, that's because their habitat is basically being destroyed, isn't it?
That's right, yes. They rely on dead wood underneath the ground for a lot of their life cycle, and there isn't enough of it around for them.
Although those figures we just saw could be a bit misleading, because it might not be that there aren't any there, it just might be that they weren't spotted.
Yeah, it might be that you didn't see them, or that the news of our great stag hunt hasn't reached people yet, so that's why we're asking people.
Now, Laura has brought with her a sandwich box with something you wouldn't want to eat in it. What have we got here, Laura?
So we've got 2 stag beetle larvae. They live underground, feed on rotting wood.
And if you dug up your garden and found something like this, the best thing to do is put it straight back again, isn't it?
It is, yes. With as much of the rotting wood as possible, so they can continue their life cycle.
And how long do they stay under?
They can be anything from 2 to 7 years.
And then they're not the nicest looking, are they? But then when they come to maturity and are out on the surface, they're not that nice looking either, are we? We've got some pictures of stag beetles in action.
They're very striking, large beetles, and they've got these giant mandibles, which they actually use for fighting the males.
So they have a proper purpose then?
Yes, they do. Yes.
And so breeding is their main function, isn't it?
It is. They only live for about 6 to 8 weeks as an adult, and in that time they have to find a mate, and the female has to lay her eggs in an appropriate place with lots of dead wood.
And this is the time of year when we're likely to see them, if at all, isn't it?
It is, yes. On warm sunny evenings, flying in your garden or in a park, have a look out.
So now you want us to spot them. What do we do if we do see them?
So if you do see them, we'd like you to go to the website, ptes.org/stagbeetle, and tell us what you've seen.
And where you are, and then you'll work out the figures and we'll know for next year.
Yes.
And hopefully numbers will start to increase as we have a bit more dead wood around and they know where to nest.
That's right, yes.
All right, brilliant. Well, thank you very much. And more information about stag beetles on our website. But what weather do they like? Well, hopefully what's coming up in the forecast.
From blizzards to pool, driving through Europe. Eurotunnel the Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather.
Well, as planned, there has been a fair bit of gloom about today, an awful lot of cloud sitting on top of us. The good news is there'll be much less of it tomorrow, and as well as some sunshine, it'll also be a lot warmer as well. Back to tonight, it's going to get quite cold as the cloud gets nibbled away from the south and the clear spells develop. After dark, we're going to see temperatures take a bit of a tumble down to around 4 or 5 degrees in some rural spots, and that's cold enough even for a touch of frost. Plus, there'll be some patchy mist about as well, but that shouldn't last very long tomorrow morning, and there should be plenty of decent sunny spells to get the day off to a good start. Now, as we head through the day, there will be cloud, there will be sunshine at times, mixture of both, but it's going to warm up quite nicely. Today we got up to around 12-13 degrees. Tomorrow we're back to where we should be, 18-19, that's 66 in Fahrenheit. But as things warm up, there is a chance that we could see some showers developing. Now, they'll be fairly few and far between, but if one lands on you, you'll certainly know about it. Could be sharp and quite heavy, but as I say, many of us will miss out, and it will just be a dry and fine day. As for your high tide times, well, you can see in Hastings 2 o'clock in the morning and then 2:20 in the afternoon.
Eurotunnel the Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather.
Keeping a close eye on summer. The Pollen Count, sponsored by Ilogy Eye Drops.
Well, with the grass pollen season only just starting, levels aren't too bad, and even in the best of the bright and fine weather tomorrow, they should be mainly moderate, and that's how they'll stay through the weekend, but they will drop under any showers.
Now, have you ever wondered what it's like bringing up twins? Tiring, I imagine, Fred?
More so for my poor wife.
I am sure, yeah. Well, tomorrow we meet the family that knows only too well what it's like, and they're about to perfect the art.
Yes, that's because they've got not one set, but two. Yes, big brothers Harley and Hayden have been joined by newborn baby brothers Donnie and Dougie. Find out how the family are getting on when we'll meet Mum tomorrow.
Wow. She deserves a medal. Now, in just a moment, the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale and Alistair Stewart.
Stacey's got out news, but for now, from the team here at ITV Meridian, thanks for watching. Take care.
Good
Bye-bye.
night.